When I became company director, my father said, "Don't get cocky, you just got lucky." I canceled their secret financial aid. When he called about missing money, I said, "Strange how a talentless person matters." When I was promoted to company director, my father said at a family dinner, "Don't get cocky, you just got lucky. Our family never had real talent." I stayed silent. A week later, I canceled the monthly financial aid I'd secretly provided my parents for 3 years. When my father called about the money, I said, "I just got lucky with a high-paying job, but luck's fickle. Couldn't help this month." He started yelling about bills and debts. "Strange," I said, "that a talentless person suddenly matters so much to your budget." Now my parents sold their car to pay bills, and I bought a new house. Sometimes a lack of real talent proves very costly for those who believe it. Let me take you back about 4 years ago. I was driving my beat-up 2006 Honda Civic to a job interview, praying the whole time that the check engine light wouldn't turn into something serious before I got this gig. The AC was busted, and in the middle of July in Texas, that's basically torture. I had sweat stains showing through my only decent button-up, and I kept having to blot my face with napkins from Whataburger. I'd been grinding for years, putting myself through night school while working full-time at this small marketing agency. The pay was garbage, like ramen for dinner 3 nights a week garbage. But they were flexible with my schedule, and I needed that education to climb out of the hole. My parents? They were always quick with the constructive criticism. Dad worked at the same factory for 35 years. Mom was a receptionist. Stable jobs, nothing fancy. They weren't poor, but they weren't exactly rolling in it either. Growing up, anytime I mentioned wanting something more, Dad would give me this look, like I was some naive kid who didn't understand how the world worked. "People like us don't get the corner office," he'd say. "We're the worker bees, not the queen." That stuff sinks in when you're young, you know? But something in me never quite believed it. So there I was, sweating bullets, walking into Horizon Digital Marketing for an interview as their new content strategist. Not a huge title, but a serious step up from where I was. And I crushed that interview, absolutely demolished it. They offered me the job on the spot with a salary that made my eyes water. First thing I did, called my parents. "Big mistake. That's great, honey, but don't get your hopes up. Those fancy companies hire and fire all the time," Mom said. Dad chimed in from the background. "Tell her to get everything in writing. They'll probably change their mind. No congratulations, no pride, just waiting for me to fail." Still, I took that job and worked my absolute tail off. Came in early, stayed late, volunteered for the projects nobody wanted. My boss, Sharon, noticed. Within a year, I was leading a team of 3. By year 2, I was managing the entire content department. Meanwhile, I started noticing some concerning calls from my parents. Their roof was leaking. Dad's hours got cut back. Mom needed dental work they couldn't afford. I was making good money by then, so I started helping out. Not huge amounts, just enough to keep them comfortable. A couple grand a month directly. Deposited into their account. I never told them it was from me. Just said I had a connection who was helping out families in need. They accepted it without too many questions, which told me they were in worse shape than they let on. Fast forward to 3 months ago. I got called into the big corner office. Sharon was there with the CEO. "We're restructuring," Sharon said, and my heart sank. I thought I was getting laid off, but then she continued. "And we want you to become our new director of digital strategy. You'll oversee content, SEO, and social media divisions." I nearly fell out of my chair. The salary they offered was double what I was making. Double, plus equity. I signed those papers so fast the ink barely had time to dry. That weekend, I drove my Civic over to my parents' place for our monthly dinner. I was bursting to tell them. For once, they couldn't say I was just lucky, or that it wouldn't last. This was real achievement, earned through blood, sweat, and tears. I waited until we were all sitting down, Dad working on his Lone Star, Mom picking at her casserole. "I have some news," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I got promoted. I'm the new director of digital strategy at Horizon." There was a pause. Mom smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Dad took a long pull on his beer before setting it down. "Well, don't get cocky about it. You just got lucky with that place. Our family never had real talent for climbing ladders." The room went quiet. I could hear the fridge humming in the background, the clock ticking on the wall. Something broke inside me in that moment. I nodded, smiled, and changed the subject. We talked about the Cowboys' chances this season, about the neighbor's new fence, about anything but my success. On the drive home, I called my financial advisor and canceled the recurring payment to my parents' account. Update, y'all, the comments are blowing up. So many of you asking if I felt guilty about stopping the payments. Truth is, I did at first, like I was being petty. But doesn't everyone have a breaking point? I've been reading your stories of similar family dynamics, and wow, I'm not alone. My phone just buzzed with Dad's name, 3rd time today. Do I answer and explain myself, or just let him feel what I've felt for years? A week went by. Then another. No calls from my parents, which was unusual. By the 3rd week, I figured they either hadn't noticed the missing deposit or were too proud to mention it. Then my phone rang on a Tuesday night. Dad's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello?" I kept my voice neutral. "The money didn't come through this month," he said. No greeting, no small talk. "What money?" I played dumb. The assistance. From your friend." He sounded uncomfortable, which was a first. "Oh, that." I took a deep breath. "Yeah, that's not happening anymore." Silence on the other end. Then, "What do you mean it's not happening? We were counting on that. We have bills due next week." I walked over to my window, looking out at the apartment complex pool below. Kids were splashing around, carefree. I just got lucky with a high-paying job, but luck is fickle. I couldn't help this month. This isn't a joke. His voice rose. We have the property tax coming up and your mother needs her medication. We're already behind on utilities. I felt a twinge of guilt, but then remembered every dismissive comment, every undermining remark, every time they'd prepared me for failure instead of success. Strange, I said, keeping my voice even, that a talentless person suddenly matters so much to your budget. More silence. Then I heard the penny drop. It was you? You were sending the money? His voice had dropped to almost a whisper. For 3 years, Dad. While you were telling me I was just lucky, that I didn't have real talent, that I shouldn't get my hopes up, I was keeping your lights on. I heard him inhale sharply. Why didn't you tell us? Would it have changed anything? Would you have suddenly been proud of me, or would you have just accepted it as your due? He started talking fast then, about how they were in trouble, how they needed that money, how they might lose the house. The same house I grew up in, with the bedroom where I'd cried myself to sleep after countless conversations about managing my expectations. I'm sorry, I said, not feeling sorry at all. I've got a big project due tomorrow. Being director comes with a lot of responsibility. I should go. I hung up and turned my phone off for the rest of the night. The next few weeks were wild. My parents called daily, alternating between guilt trips, anger, and finally, desperation. Mom started calling my friends, telling them I was abandoning my family. Dad showed up at my apartment unannounced one evening, looking like he hadn't slept in days. We're selling the car, he told me, standing awkwardly in my living room. The Buick. It should cover us for a few months until we figure something out. The Buick was their pride and joy. Dad washed it every Sunday, weather permitting. He'd turn down newer models because they don't make them like they used to. That's a shame, I said, not inviting him to sit down. But you've always been practical about these things. He looked around my apartment, taking in the new furniture, the big TV, the evidence of my success. I never thought, he started, then stopped himself. We never thought you'd go this far. That was the problem, I replied. You never did. After he left, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the sunset. I should have felt terrible, but mostly I felt free. Like I'd finally cut the cord that had been holding me back. The next day at work, Sharon pulled me aside. The executive team is impressed with your leadership, she said. The new content strategy is already showing results. I thanked her, trying to stay professional while internally doing cartwheels. There's something else, she continued. We're expanding to Austin. New office, new opportunities. We'd like you to head up the operation there. Austin, the tech hub of Texas. A fresh start in a booming city with even more responsibility and, yes, a significant bump in pay. I'll need a few days to think about it, I told her, but I already knew my answer. That weekend, I drove out to look at houses in Austin. Not apartments, houses. With the new salary, I could afford something nice in one of the up-and-coming neighborhoods. My realtor showed me a beautiful craftsman-style place with a yard big enough for the dog I'd always wanted but could never have in an apartment. I'll take it, I said, surprising even myself with how quickly I decided. Update. I'm sitting in my empty apartment with boxes everywhere. The Austin house closes tomorrow, and I'm equal parts terrified and excited. So many of you have asked if I've told my parents about the move. Not yet. They've been leaving voicemails about selling furniture to make rent. Mom actually cried in her last message. Part of me wants to help them just to stop the guilt, but another part remembers 30 years of being told I wasn't special. Should I invite them to see the new house once I'm settled? Or is clean break the healthier choice? 2 months later, I was settled into my new home in Austin. The company had covered my relocation expenses, and I'd even splurged on professional decorators to make the place perfect. Every morning, I'd wake up, let my new rescue dog Bandit out into the yard, and make coffee in my sun-drenched kitchen, hardly believing this was my life now. I hadn't spoken to my parents in weeks. Through the family grapevine, mainly my cousin, Jen, who couldn't keep a secret if her life depended on it, I heard they'd sold the Buick and were struggling to make ends meet. Dad had taken on a night security job despite his bad knee, and Mom was cleaning houses on weekends. Part of me felt awful. These were my parents after all. They'd put a roof over my head, fed me, made sure I got an education. But another part, the part that had endured years of subtle undermining and low expectations, felt they were finally understanding what it meant to dismiss someone's achievements. One Saturday morning, as I was sipping coffee on my back porch, watching Bandit chase squirrels, my phone rang. Mom. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello? We haven't heard from you in so long, she said, her voice small. Are you okay? I'm fine, Mom. Better than fine, actually. I moved to Austin. The company promoted me again. Austin? She sounded shocked. But that's hours away. Why didn't you tell us? Would it have mattered? I asked, watching a hummingbird hover near my newly planted garden. Of course it would. We're your parents. I sighed. Mom. For as long as I can remember, you and Dad have been preparing me for failure. When I succeeded anyway, you couldn't even acknowledge it. Why would I share more successes with you? She was quiet for a moment. Your father's not been sleeping. He's worried sick about the bills. We might lose the house. Classic Mom. Deflect, deflect, deflect. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I meant it. But I'm not your financial plan. We never asked you for money, she protested. No, you just took it without question for 3 years, all while continuing. To treat me like I was fooling myself about my capabilities. Another pause. Then, he didn't mean those things the way they sounded. He was just trying to protect you from disappointment. By becoming the disappointment himself? I asked. That's some strategy. The conversation went in circles after that. She wanted to know if I'd reconsider helping them just until things stabilize. I told her I needed to focus on my own life, for a while. Before hanging up, she said something that stuck with me. I don't recognize who you've become. The truth was, I barely recognized myself either, but in the best possible way. I'd shed the weight of their expectations and found someone stronger, more confident, more successful than any of us had imagined. A few days later, an email arrived from Dad. This was unprecedented. He considered anything beyond basic texting to be computer nonsense. The message was brief. I'm sorry, you were right, we were wrong. Can we talk? I stared at those words for a long time, Bandit curled up at my feet. Part of me wanted to delete it to maintain the clean break I'd been enjoying, but another part remembered the dad who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd built me a treehouse, who'd worked those 35 years at the factory to keep food on our table. I replied with just my phone number and a good time to call. That evening, my phone rang exactly at the appointed hour. Hey, Dad, I answered, settling into my porch swing. Hey, he said, his voice sounding older than I remembered. Thanks for agreeing to talk. Sure. Awkward silence followed. Dad had never been good with words, especially emotional ones. Your mother and I have been doing some thinking, he finally said, about how we treated your success. You were right. I was wrong. I stayed silent, waiting. I think I was scared, he continued, surprising me. Dad never admitted fear. Scared that you'd outgrow us. And look what happened, you did. Nice house in Austin, big job. You didn't need us anymore. I outgrew your low expectations, Dad. Not you. He cleared his throat. Fair enough. The thing is, I'm proud of you. Should have said it long ago. Really proud. What you've accomplished, it's not luck. It's talent. Real talent. The kind no one in our family had before. The words I'd wanted to hear for years. Why did they sound so hollow now? Thanks, I said simply. About the money, he started. I cut him off. I'm not resuming the payments, Dad. No, that's not. He took a deep breath. I wanted to pay you back. What we took without knowing. It might take years, but keep it, I interrupted. Consider it a gift, but I won't be sending more. Another silence fell. Then, could we come see your new place? Sometime? Get to know this director daughter of ours? I looked around at my beautiful home, thought about the journey that had brought me here. Maybe, I said. Let me think about it. After we hung up, I took Bandit for a long walk through the neighborhood. The Texas sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, and I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders with each step. My parents had seen me clearly for the first time in my adult life, not as the kid who needed to manage expectations, but as the successful woman who had proved them wrong at every turn. Would I help them financially again? Probably not. Some lessons needed to stick. Would I let them back into my life? Maybe, slowly, on my terms. A month later, I invited them to visit. They arrived in a rental car, looking smaller somehow. Dad's hair had more gray, Mom's smile more tentative. They stood awkwardly on my doorstep as Bandit danced around their feet. Nice place, Dad said, looking up at the house with genuine admiration. All earned, not luck, I replied. He nodded slowly. All earned, no doubt about it. We weren't fixed. The damage of years doesn't heal in a few conversations. But as I showed them around my home, I realized something important. I didn't need their approval anymore. Their respect, maybe. Their love, ideally. But their validation? I'd found that on my own. Coffee? I offered, leading them to the kitchen. I've got some fresh scones, too. Sounds perfect, Mom said, looking around at the granite countertops and stainless appliances with wide eyes. As I prepared the coffee, I caught Dad staring at my framed director's certificate on the wall. Sometimes, I said, handing him a mug, a lack of real talent proves very costly for those who believe it. He met my eyes and nodded slowly. Lesson learned, he said quietly. Believe me. Update. It's been a year since the Austin move, and life's completely different now. My team at work has doubled in size and we're crushing our targets. The relationship with my parents? We talk once a month. Nothing deep, but civil. They've never asked for money again, and Dad's actually paying back small amounts from his security job. Reading your comments about forgiveness has me thinking, is maintaining distance healing or hurting? They're coming for Thanksgiving next week. First holiday together in forever. Do I keep the conversation light, or is it time to really clear the air once and for all?